It's the track.
Okay, recording the podcast Saturday, August the 15th. Day later, as always, for Shane. Hot takes. Roadie holding down the fort in the Track Stitch Global Headquarters. Shano, you've got a hard stop today, 1 hour, so we're going to go hard. Cash Marvin off for a golf lesson.
He is.
Well, are you getting it from you?
As much as a stepfather, I can assure you.
So you're not giving it to him?
Oh, shit, no, that wouldn't be a lesson.
I was going to say, lucky for Cash Marvin. All right, Shado, we've got the hard stop, probably about an hour, so let's dig straight into it. Euro Championships special. Shano, kind of the European Championships, even though we're not European in terms of our geographical upbringings, you could say. This was always kind of like an event that held a little bit of mystique or mythology for us growing up. You know, the likes of Coe, Ovett, Cram, Olaf, Beyer, Liz McColgan, Sonia O'Sullivan, some of the great names, eh? Like, there was always something about the Euros.
Oh, 100%. You did right. I can't really add a lot to that, but it always had a mystique and an allure, and like Coe and Beyer and all those guys in the European Championships, and the European athletes have always held it in high esteem, and that's within at least sort of purist or aficionado track nut circles. It still does hold that, whereas the Com Games has lost it. Yeah,
and I mean, like the Com Games was always big for us, in the same ways that, like, say, for the Germans or the Dutch or the French, the Euros was always pretty big. And yeah, again, we always had quite a lot of access to the Commonwealth Games growing up. You know, I think my first memory of watching it on TV was Auckland 1990. We didn't really have that much access to watching the Euros.
Oh,
and you would see these.
Yeah,
exactly. But either way, yeah, I mean, I think you're right. As we're getting on throughout the course of history, maybe these events are not quite holding the same amount of esteem as they have in the past. You know, we talked about how the Commonwealth Games maybe don't have the same, well, they definitely don't, but every now and then you'll get a series of great performances or great events, just great matchups. And it's no different, Shano, at the Europeans this time around, because we definitely had some outstanding events in the last week of action. And we'll kick it off with day one in the men's 5,000 meters. Shane Roadie, a week ago on the podcast, you made one of the hottest takes that has ever been made, and the fans went crazy. All 15 of them, they went absolutely wild over your claim around Jakob Ingebrigtsen. So I'll let you take the floor on this one. Set it up with this. He comes back after almost 330 odd days of absence to win the European 5,000 meters in 13:15:29. Shane, you famously made a hot take on the pod a week ago. Do you want to address that?
Address it as if I've done something wrong or there's a problem. No, I mean, I got it wrong, like you did with Kerr. So
yes,
and
it was a big one, though. It was. You have to admit.
Was no different to your one with Kerr, Jason.
Well, I don't know, Shane.
Yeah, you said he had absolutely no chance.
You said Jakob had wasn't talented.
Wrote a whole Substack about it, and then it didn't blow up. So I don't think it's any different, mate.
I'm not sure if I'd entirely agree with that one. You did say, and I know what you were trying to say, but it was a pretty explosive take. But either way, we'll move beyond that, because let's just get into the actual.
Just a second. So, yeah, I don't think it was a very explosive take. I mean, all we had to go on was the fact that he had tried a similar comeback 12 months earlier. There's no evidence he was fit. The videos of him online, as we all talked about, looked like he was decidedly unfit, and there was the same vibe of perhaps a lack of seriousness in terms of the preparation he had done and where his mind and his head had gone, and competing against the world 10K champion and a host of other race fit, sharp, hungry athletes. I gave him no chance in the sense I didn't think he would have that 1500 sharpness when last year at the world champs he was 341 point in his heat.
No, 337. 337. I think you said that last week. I didn't mention it, but he did. He ran 337 in that heat of the world champs. Either way.
But either way, way off. So
yes,
I gave him no chance. And I mean, what can I really say? I mean, I can't defend I can't mitigate it in any way. You just
I don't think it was really that was the controversial statement. I think it was more the overarching talent one, because I don't disagree with you. Yeah, I didn't disagree with you per se with that he had no chance of winning this, because Shane, I mean, honestly, it definitely crossed my mind too that he may that this just may not happen for him, and it could have really gone one of either way. I felt I sat a little bit more on I think I took an easy option here by saying that I thought he would medal. I thought he would get third.
I think you got it right. I think those other guys, as you said on the Substack, I think Grecia et al. Mucked it up enormously. They just absolutely, like all those Africans did for years with Farah, just literally handed him the title on a plate if he was good enough. And the amazing thing was he was, without any race. Incredible. Like, I couldn't have predicted that. Yeah, no one did, I don't think. And so your option wasn't the easy one. It was the sensible, non sort of extreme hot take, sort of Stephen A. Smith. Mine was more of a Stephen A. Smith. I just thought he'd be similar to what you said, but then more guys who were race fit would roll past him that last 100, because he doesn't, even at his best, his last 100 isn't really that good for an athlete of his caliber. Similar to El Garouge or Morsalli, they're long speed guys, and I thought it would go exactly the way it did, and didn't give him the credit he had, because perhaps he has got more talent than I thought. But addressing the talent point, I mean, I don't back down from that at all. I mean, what I meant was, if you lined all these guys up without doing all the volume, and so the headline, I think, is more sensationalist than perhaps. Maybe that's what I'm doing. I mean, I don't really like the Stephen A. Smith takes of everything being super dramatic, but maybe it was a bit Stephen A. Smithish in terms of, I don't think he obviously no talent. He's run 7:17. What I meant was, and it reminds me a little bit of something that Liddy had said about Snell, that he had huge talent. It took a lot of the volume, the distance work to bring that talent out. If you lined him up against his peers when he was sort of late Mount Albert Graham, I think it was Mount Albert Grabber days, late school days, he wasn't really a lot better than some of these other half milers, Peter Snell. But then you do the volume and the talent being, as you said, Jason, being able to absorb that volume, and then the talent shines through. So I more meant that in terms of without being able to put together enormous volume, I didn't think he would have the raw sort of anaerobic talent to shoot through those guys and beat them. That's sort of more what I meant. I know. But I did say I don't think he's like super talented, but I meant in that kind of narrow way that he has needed a lot to bring out his immense talent. Yep. Yeah.
So no, I'm with you. I was just razzing you because you caught me a little bit off guard with Femke Bowl and her odds last week, which we'll also address.
He's on the attack.
This is a potentially volatile podcast, Shado. We've got a big segment coming up on the Women's 800. You know that. But sticking with the 5K for now, where does this rate as just an overall great win in the annals of track and field? Because, I mean, this is still a pretty insane comeback from Jakob here. I did note this on the Substack. It had been, since he was injured in 2025, I think it was about 170 odd days that he hadn't raced before the World Champs. And then he raced at the World Champs. He had the 3 races. He had the heat of the 15, the semi or the heat of the 5K in the final, and then another 330 odd days. So that really means in almost a 500-day period, the guy had only raced 3 times. And he comes back to take care of this field. we'll talk about sort of, again, we'll elaborate more on how underwhelming I felt Gressier, Labalu and Isaac Kamali were in a second, right? But the fact is, he still came back and was able to handle that field with relative ease. Where does that rate as just an all-time great performance? And I think also as well, do you think that this is a performance that adds, or like massively adds to his legacy, just as a John Walker-esque have spikes, will run type of figure? It's pretty awesome, eh?
It's incredible. And perhaps Gressier and his team and Labalu, perhaps they watched the pod because they acted the way I did and thinking they sort of discounted him by running it that way, thinking, well, they'll just do what they want, as if he wasn't a factor, because it's quite polarized in the sense of if he is a factor, that's the worst possible way they could have won the race. But having said that, he still had to win it the way he won it. And to do that, I'm even more interested in mentally the turnaround, the turmoil with the father, the family, being that big a star, having the child, he's making money, still a very young man. And as is Keely, and I want to speak about that, I had some thoughts about that as well. So these are very young people, and to go out there after effectively 2 years with not really racing or being at the level of these guys, and we're not talking about schleps here, we're talking about the world 10K champion Labalu. Like these are great
world
athletes.
5K silver medalist, Keely.
Yes. So he's gone out there and let's be honest, he's handed it to them. He kind of ran away from them.
Yeah.
And to do that against that backdrop is astonishing, and absolutely it adds to his legacy. It does. It's that sort of almost sort of Muhammad Ali rumble in the jungle type of like counted out, he's in the rope-a-dope against all odds, this guy who has no form at all, coming back against top world champs, gold medal winners and medalists, the elite of world distance running. Only a handful of them, but he had to beat them.
Yeah,
and he's done it. So what do you say? There's nothing. There's no words to describe how brilliant a performance it is.
Yeah, it's a little bit of the Tiger Woods. I mean, when you were talking about the comeback against all odds, I was thinking about the Jack Nicklaus winning the Masters in '86 for all the old school golf nuts out there, or Tiger in 2019 coming back. But maybe that's a little unfair to Jakob because he's not quite at the absolute end of his career. But in similar vein, it's just almost like it seemed like a muscle memory win, almost, right? Like I sort of felt that for me going into this one, Jakob's best chance was if he could just be in the hunt with 400 or 500 meters to go, and it's like that old pro sort of, again, the muscle memory of having been in these situations and being able to deliver just sort of comes to the fore for the great champions that we've seen over the course of history. And I think that's what happened. And getting on to just the way that you mentioned this, the way that the race was constructed, for all of Jakob's greatness in this one, and he deserves to win, and he was the best on the day, I cannot believe how perfect this race was set up for Jakob to win by those guys. I mean, as I was watching this, I was sort of I think the thing that I thought was going to be worse for the worst case scenario for Jakob is if the race was incredibly slow through 4K. I noted this on the sub, and I believe it. It's because when you go really, really slow through 4K, you bring into play so many other athletes that just wouldn't be there. Like these mid-pack guys are all of a sudden in it, and it just creates more traffic for the guy to go around. It brings into play guys that really shouldn't be there. And so your pool of athletes that you have to beat is just naturally higher. But the way that it went was kind of crazy. It was, I think, just under 5:30 at the 2K, and Dominic Labalu, of all people, makes this big move to drag the field out through 3K, and they get to 3K in like 8:07, and Jakob is there at 8:10. And I'm just like, oh my goodness me, like that is just the perfect rhythm for him. It's not fast enough to really test his fitness, but it's also fast enough that it's starting to peel apart these stragglers and make it difficult for him. And then the biggest part of the race was then that, and it always is in these 5Ks, that next mile from 3K to 4,600. And the big thing here is that I noted Gressier makes this huge move to get up to the front of the race where he runs like a sub 30, 200 meters, which must have taken it out of him. And then Labalu, who'd taken the pace on to get to 3K, all of a sudden just seems to pop mid-race and slows it right down. So this big move that Gressier makes to get to the front is just completely worthless. And then within 600 meters, Jakob is at the front of the race. To double down on that for Gressier, he then decides to bite when Labalu comes up to his shoulder with just over a K to go and becomes the lead-out man for Jakob when I really believe Gressier's best chance of winning. In fact, his two best races he's ever had were the Diamond League final over 3K last year and the World 10K where he was sort of mid-pack. He did the D to Bauman. Like he was in that pack and just exploded and really kicked because Gressier can kick. And they just did everything possible to set this up for Jakob. And you said that maybe it was a case of them underestimating him. You could also make a case it was the other way, that the greatness of Jakob was just there in their minds that forced them to do these crazy moves that then, in a way, just serendipitously set up the race for him. So, it was a fascinating race, and it was really, really exciting to watch. And his strength in the final 100 meters, people will say, look at that kick from Jakob. That was a great kick. I don't believe that's a kick. That was just like that build up of strength and joy and emotion just coming through in that last 100, or was it 12.7 or something like that. So it is a great finish. But he just outstrengthed them. And what an awesome race, Shane.
I don't have anything to add to that because the last points you made, I basically just repeated it back to you to endorse what you said. So yeah, no further questions, Your Honour, for the witness. It was very good. I liked it. It's good.
Sticking with the 5K just briefly before we move on, Jakob had some comments to the media towards the end of the week about Josh Kerr not being at Euros. Did you hear those comments, Shana?
I saw that, yeah.
Yeah, so I got it down here because it's interesting just to hear it, but get your thoughts on it. This is what Jakob had to say. Of course, I'm going to go for times, but I don't think you have to do one or the other. Asked if he was disappointed Kerr's not racing Birmingham, he said very, and I think a lot of people should be because that's what championships are all about. It's not for us as athletes to choose almost where to participate. We have these championships for a reason, and I think that is for the best athletes to compete. That is the whole point. So I definitely think it is ruining the sport if we're not participating. We all have different plans, but I could never see myself in that position. What do you think about those comments?
Running is an individual sport, one of the most individual sports. It attracts loners and people with a singularity in their worldview and their focus. So it's not really shocking that two guys who are basically carbon copies of each other in terms of like this singular determined focus have different views on how they're going to do the sport. And it was the same with Cohen Ovet. It's been the same since Adam played fullback. These guys have their own ways, and it obviously works for Jakob to have Spikes will race and get out there and do it. That's his ethos, and that's what defines his career. That's really cool for the sport that he's not prissy around it. But for Kerr, I mean, I respect Josh Kerr's choices and Danny Mackey because they've figured out that for Josh Kerr, it's better for him to cherry pick his opportunities and be at a premium level. And I know for myself at the kind of Pisley level I was at, I probably shouldn't have raced so much close together because I wasn't particularly resistant to like stress on my body and probably mentally as well. Yeah. I'd have been better off taking the Josh Kerr approach, and there is evidence to suggest that when Kerr has tried to race more, his level doesn't stay up because he just sort of flounders a little bit. So perhaps he's a more highly strung, more neurotic, a guy who more needs things to be absolutely perfect to get the most out of himself. That's fine. You can just respect it. It's a little bit immature from Jakob, and it kind of takes away a little bit from coming back and winning the way he does, because it's like it's sort of made from a position of insecurity to detract from someone who's just broken a world record that you would love to have and you didn't get. And then it's just like, oh, this guy, he doesn't do it like the way I think you should do it. It would be a better tact to just be like, basically say nothing, which he used to do. So maybe, he used to kind of be a bit more nonchalant in his disposition. He used to be a bit more like, I'm the best, and you guys can prove otherwise. Sort of, I'll let my feet do the talking. But
at the end of the
day, man, it's normal stuff. These guys, they're all young guys, and they're all got egos, and they're all going to go, my it's like, in other sports, oh yeah, my X is better than your Y, and I did this.
Yeah.
And at the end of the day, they're both huge stars, and they're great to watch, and it's awesome that they're both out there competing and running well.
Yeah, on one side, if you take those comments at a face value, it's hard to disagree with them. I mean, we do need the stars in the sport fronting up and racing and being out there. And certainly in the past,
he ran the Com Games mile and won it in the tactical race. So it's sort of a little bit, he's entitled to choose the Commonwealth.
No, of course he is. Of course he is. But in the essence, Jakob is not wrong that fronting up for the big events is good for the sport, and that's what the top stars in the sport should feel somewhat, I guess, obliged to do, even though they don't have to. Because we have seen this in the past, like back in those Com Games years, like Steve Cram always used to do the doubles at the Euros and the Com Games. Co didn't actually. Co very rarely ran the Commonwealth Games. I think he ran them in 1990. That was his last one. In fact, was that also his only Com Games, Shane? Justin Ronaldo will know this one, but I don't think he ran the Com Games.
86 was that Euros? You ran at 86.
86 was Euros in Stuttgart where he ran the 800. But remember, 86, Cram won the 8:15 double there in Edinburgh in that awesome race. The state Steve Cram. Yeah. So, and I think the point that you make is really good, because if you want to actually step back away from everything, look at where Josh Kerr is right now. He's 28 years of age. He's just broken the world mile record, a mark which I think both of us believe Jakob at least should have had a little bit further out there for Kerr to shoot at. He should have done it at some point in the last couple of years and didn't, but he didn't because he was injured. And that's because the guy races like an absolute maniac and runs himself into the ground. I think you can also look at 2025 where Josh Kerr did Grand Slam Czech. Of course, there was a different motivation for running that one other than maybe the spirit of competition like it was framed up to, but hey, we've all got to make $1. And Josh Kerr didn't run particularly well in 2025. In fact, he limped off the track in the biggest race of the year because he'd been running since the start of April. So yeah, it's a tough one for me because yes, on the surface, I agree with what Jakob's saying. And I'm like, those are good comments. But when you actually dive deeper, like you said, it does come off. And it's a little bit self-righteous because you also ask the question, hey, maybe if he didn't win that race and had, God forbid, finished third, is he really so quick to offer his opinions on this kind of stuff? But either way, it's he's certainly back in the game.
Honest,
and
I like Jakob, and I don't really I don't read too much, and I didn't really think anything when I saw it. I was like, it's just a normal thing to me. But if you ask me my actual opinion about it and forgetting the individuals involved, I think it's an absolute load of nonsense. I mean, it's a non-championship year for a start in terms of major championships. Kerr decided to do what a lot of the greats have done and target a world record on a particular day and smashed it at home, out of nowhere, and then went to the Commonwealth Games where he faced the World Olympic the World Championship silver medalist and gold medalist from 22 and 25. Yeah, renowned kicker and Jake Whiteman. And until Kerr broke that record, the best 1,500 mile man in the world by some margin, Cam Myers. He raced against those guys. That's a better field than he'd face at Euros. And so he's gone and raced. If he didn't run any of those champs, I think it would have more credence. But to break the world mile record in a non-major championship year, because as you said at the beginning, these aren't actually majors, particularly not anymore. They're not world or they're not global championships. But he faced up in one of the two against the best field that either championship offered and spanked them handsomely. So I think it's kind of nonsense. If you put aside, like I enjoy Jakob more than Kerr as a personality. I do. I think it's just I resonate more with that sort of like irreverence. But at the same time, if you're looking at it on its merits and forgetting the individuals, any biases aside, and look at it and go, I sort of read it and I was like, whatever, mate,
I like that. That's good. That's why we come to the podcast to hear. Good take, Shane.
It was a mini FUC, wasn't it?
It was. That's good. That counts. Should we move on? Because we didn't just have the men's 5,000. By the way, interesting decision from the organising committee here to put this one on the first night of the championships. I have to say I'm not quite sure if I understand that one. There were not a lot of people in the Alexander Stadium in Birmingham for this one. It's been a championships, I guess, beset by lack of spectator interest. Certainly there was a reasonable crowd last night for the women's 800, touch on that in a second, but that first night for the return of Jakob and Ingebrigtsen, the men's 5,000 is always a big time final at any championships events, whether it's a national championships, an Olympics or worlds, comms or Euros. They put it on night one. That was a little bit strange, but there were some more events throughout the week. And Shane, we'll go to the men's 800 because I know that you.
Yeah, I just to give you a time reminder. I've got to leave exactly 8:30. We're only at 32 minutes, so That's fine. Yep. I've planned it. You know me. I'm a planner, Shane. We'll get through this one. You run a tight ship.
I run a tight ship here at the Track Stitch podcast, as everybody knows. Shano, the men's 800. I called this one the race of firsts. We'll talk about some of these in a second. Mark English gets the win, 145. I wrote down 2.5, but it might have been 2.6. Either way, a 145 low performance. Mark English becomes the oldest major championship 800 meter winner ever. Do you remember who he took that mantle from? We talked about it last week.
You told me last week.
I'll tell you. 1993 Worlds, Paul Ruto.
Yeah, one of the Kenyans, yeah.
Yeah. So he runs 143.49 in the semi. That was the 7th fastest time in a prelim ever. 4 of those times came from 2025 and 2 of them in 2024. So just awesome running here. And listen to this one, Shane. He first medaled at the Euros in 2014. Isn't that incredible? So 12 years. Like this longevity gap, I don't know for sure, but I'll make the claim here on the pod. Someone can fact check me. I'm almost certain that nobody has been able to medal in a track event, let alone the men's 800 meters, as competitive as it is at almost any level, Com Games, Euros, World Olympics, 12 years apart. What an awesome performance. I know that you love the Irish commentary on this one here, which was it was similar to Bruce McAvaney commentating the 1500 meters from 2022 with Ollie Hoare winning that 1500. Kind of a simple race here. Muhammad Atoui came hard, but Mark had enough. And the other story, though, was Shane, Max Bergen did not... The Bergenator, DNSing in a final. And I said the reason why I call this one the race of firsts, because Mark English, obviously the oldest major 800-meter winner or sub-major 800 winner. But I've also never seen a men's 800 final with an empty lane because someone pulled out of it, let alone an athlete of Max Bergen's quality. So, Shano, what was your take on this men's 800?
English just superb and well-deserved. Great execution, loved his running form and being rewarded for devotion, decades of devotion or a decade plus of devotion to the sport and a real technician. Like you can see how much he's learned from years. And one thing to do it for a long time, but he's thought about it. Obviously Justin Ronaldo behind him. Yep. And it was cool. It was wicked. It was sort of not quite, but sort of had a sort of almost Dave Wattle-esque sort of efficient, meted out effort and beautiful acceleration. He didn't look like losing. No. And as for the Bergenator, I mean, I think I'm not really this isn't really the elephant in the room as such, but you've got a guy you've got a convergence of a guy with enormous talent in an event which requires the most from an athlete in terms of overall physical and mental and emotional capability, because there's too many things that can go wrong, as we talked about with Vito and there. You were saying, you were saying, well, she'll be hard to beat. And I said, well, anything can happen. And, anything almost did happen. Well, anything did happen in that semi. Yeah. And we'll talk about that shortly. But like with the Bergenator, it's like you've got a guy who's just got so much talent. I think he's awesome. He's a real pure 800 type. And I love how tough he is. He gets out there and he goes hard, but he's obviously got things going on, and you and I don't have any idea what they are in terms of things going on in his life or in his training or whatever that are stopping him from getting the most out of himself when it really matters. So he's going to have to address that if he wants to further his career. Yeah.
Chatting with some people about this one, and it was like, wow, Max Bergen, he's just got these, and he's just sort of cursed with like physical fragility or something. And the thing that first popped into my mind was like, man, I understand that, but also it seems like, again, it's difficult to comment, but it almost seems like it's more of a, I hate to say a mental thing, but I just can't I don't know how you can run, say, a semi in 144 on one day, and then, I mean, I guess it's plausible that you pick up such a debilitating injury that you can't go in the final another day later. But all I would say that the precedent for that, Shano, is almost zero, because you and I have both watched a lot of major championship or championship 800 meter finals. And again, I don't think I have ever seen lane 5, which is a premium lane for one of the top qualifiers, empty in a final. So I don't really know what's going on there, but it definitely took away from the finals a bit of a spectacle, because Mark did this quite easy, and he got out, he was on the shoulder. Atta Ui ran a strange race. Ben Patterson as well. Just like that guy there is another dude who's got a ton of talent, who just doesn't seem to be able to put it together tactically in these finals. And Mark just schooled them all, and it's the benefit of experience. And he is one of the great stories, Shane, and he is going to go down when his career ends, if it ever ends, because he might end up like LeBron James, still running these major events when he's in his 40s at this rate. But he's going to go down as a very, very special figure, I think, in the annals of 800 meter running. He's not the best 800 meter runner we've ever seen. He's never going to be the Olympic champion. He's never going to be the world champion. But he is now a European champion.
You never know. But yeah, I know what you're saying. He's not a candidate off the top of your head. But mate, a lot of who was it? Bungai 08. He was past his best by a considerable amount of years. Used all his wiles in a slower race. And English, if they ran the Olympic final right now, another 2 years is tough in 35, but he ran it right now. Could he win it? Yeah, he could. Like we say, anything can happen. It means 800.
Yeah.
I know.
I didn't mean that
derogatorily. I know you did.
Yeah, disrespectful at all.
He's not your like premium like talent for the 800.
Right. Yeah, he's not going to threaten the Mount Rushmore. I guess that's what I was saying, of Wilson Kipketer, David Rudisha, Seb Coe, et cetera. But
you made a reference to LeBron. I mean, sorry to cut you off, because I don't have a heap of time, but this is interesting. So you look at another basketball analogy. Look at in terms of like the impact of people's overall lives and psyche. Look at the story of Luka Doncic and Jalen Brunson. And a lot of people who don't follow the sport closely don't know that Jalen Brunson was a backup guard at the Mavericks to Luka Doncic.
Yeah,
and they wouldn't give Brunson any real money or contract or anything. So he was like, "No, stuff this," and he went and took a very fizzly contract over at the Knicks. Now he's NBA champion. And Doncic, I was reading the other day, has marital problems with his partner back in, is it Slovenia? I think he's from.
Slovenia,
yeah, and then there's court cases, and she filed for custody, and she's taken it back, and all this. And I read it was like an NBA insider, and you take that stuff with a grain of salt, but this was a pretty credible source, and it wasn't sensational the way it was written, saying that a lot of the reasons he's got problems and he can't win despite his outworldly talent is because he's not quite together or mature as a person the way he needs to be. And when it comes to key moments and key games against guys who are similar talent but have their heads together, like LeBron's always had, one woman his whole life, the family and all that stuff.
Wow.
Brunson, with Rick Brunson behind him, and that Knicks organization, which Tom Tebow was apparently like instrumental in turning them around. And they got the current coach, and he's been through it all before. And like, it's interesting because you've got like Luka Doncic should be winning titles, not Jalen Brunson, if you looked at just their raw materials, 100%. But it's not. It's worth. And so you got Mark English as your Jalen Brunson, so to speak, which is a compliment, because Jalen Brunson
for sure,
your legend forever. And you've got guys like perhaps even Patterson as well, but definitely Bergenator is sort of the Doncic, because I think Bergenator's an outworldly talent. Like the way he can go out in those races and just hit 50, 49, 8 or whatever, and he doesn't look like he's actually working too hard. He's your sort of pure 800 dude,
Well,
and he's obviously strong as well.
You and I both remember when the Bergenator burst onto the scene back as a 16-year-old, and he ran like 145 as a 17-year-old or something like that. And this was in an era too. This was not in the Sam Ruth era where just like the level is so much higher. We've got Wavelight, we've got Super Shoes, we've got Bicarb, we've got all this kind of stuff. This was like back in the mid 2010s, like when if you were running 143 at a world level, you were a legit contender, at a big championships. I mean, what was it? Pierre Ambrose Bossa? I know he ran 142 eventually, but he won the world title. Like, and I don't think anybody would say he was like a massive. So the 800 meters went through a bit of a lull there. In fact, it was quite rude for a period of time. Remember? And the Bergenator at 17 or 16 was out there running like 145 points. So he is an amazing talent. And Shader, you know that I love basketball. I'm a sort of covert basketball historian too. I absolutely love that comparison between Jalen Brunson, Mark English, and like a Max Bergen and a Luka Doncic. Yeah. So that's awesome. And I totally agree. And I think at the end of the day, we talked about Jakob and his legacy and how his legacy will get massively boosted by this European Championship win, even though it was his fourth. By the way, Justin Rinaldi texted me and said this was 15, just quick side note, 15 Euro titles in a row for Jakob Ingebrigtsen across a multitude of formats. So that was indoor running, outdoor running, and also cross country, I believe. Isn't that incredible? He is definitely Mr. Euro in that sense. But in that same way, this is another amazing piece of the puzzle or of Mark English's legacy, and he is going to absolutely, like, deservedly own a place in history in this men's event just for the longevity. I mean, he's not quite Johnny Gray yet, but yeah, who knows? And you're right, Shano, just anything could happen with the Olympics in 2 years' time. We're starting to see Emmanuel Wanyoni, those guys that were running at such a high level only a couple of years ago. It's so difficult to sustain it. Who knows? Maybe those guys have used up too much gas from the tank, and Mark English is front and center at the Olympics.
Stranger things have happened.
Stranger things have happened. Shano, that's a good segue because something strange, I guess technically, did not happen in this women's 800 meters, which was how's our timing going there? Pretty good.
20 minutes. Yeah.
Perfect.
It's not heaps of time though, because we do prattle on.
No, that's all right. We'll get through this one.
It's actually a hard. This time it's not the sort of fertilizer. I'm going to get in a bit of trouble type of thing.
No, we'll do it. We'll get through it. We'll get through it then. Women's 800 meters. Something that wasn't strange was the result here. I guess you could say the betters trifecta came through here. If you based on current form, based on experience, etc. This was the way that that I guess the bookies would have put it, with Audrey Vero coming through for the win ahead of Keely Hodgkinson and Femke Boll making up third place and the final medal. Shano, Audrey wins in the fifth fastest women's championship race ever, 154.81. Keely only 0.2 back, 155.01. And Femke equals the Dutch record of who?
Ellen van Lagen.
Correct, from 1992 Olympics. Shano, instant reaction to this race from you.
My overwhelming sentiment from it was how well Keely ran, and ran so much better than she's run all year. And she looked, maybe my eyes are deceiving me, but she looked a bit, maybe they've backed off some of the gym because she looked a bit more fluent and a little bit less bulky. And I thought she was awesome. And you know what? Like, we've given, not really her, but like her team definitely criticized them about the shape that they've created for her with all the weights and the lack of fluency and the approach with the 400. But here's some credit where it's due. I was watching some replays of her form in, say, 2019, 2021, 2020. I was just showing my partner like how,
research, love it.
Yeah, how we thought so perhaps they have gone the wrong way in terms of like the way they're preparing her. And one thing I thought about was, this is a woman, it's a bit like LeBron James with his, people criticize, he didn't win. But this is a woman who's been at or near the top of the world since 2019, since she was a 18-year-old, right? She's British, so she has all the attention of Fleet Street and all that stuff. She's been there or thereabouts, Athing Moo's come and gone, Mary Mora's come and gone. Now Vero is the sort of the next best, best thing since sliced bread. You've got Femke snapping at both their heels, and she's been at or around the best. She's the Olympic champion. She's got the one everyone wants.
Right.
Doesn't have a world championship yet. She's one of the quickest 800-meter runners in history. She should be a lot quicker if we took out all those drug-assisted, known drug-assisted times. So just some credit to her. And I thought the way she acquitted herself, she didn't just crumble like she has been in the last 50, 80 meters in some of her recent races. Yeah. And perhaps Vero coming on the scene in a non-championship year and running fast is the best thing that ever happened to her, because I feel like at this championships, there was a little bit less of that braggadocio or that we're here to break the world record vibe, and a little bit more of get down to focusing on execution and basics, which is what she's actually always done before this year. So I just thought I was really impressed with her. When the race finished, I said to my partner, I said, she ran freaking awesome, and she just wasn't good enough versus a 1:53.8 runner yesterday. She just wasn't at the level to beat Vero, who is at a higher level. She's just faster at the moment, at least.
Yeah, no, I agree. I think immediate reaction when we were texting after the race, both in agreement. I thought Keely ran extremely well, and I thought coming off that final turn, I think I'd said to you, I also said to the guys at Let's Run, we were just texting for the race, I said, they asked me what my prediction was, and I said, I think Audrey's going to win. I don't really know, but I'll take sort of the punt and say that Femke runs down Keely in the home straight. Because I guess my theory is that the race would go, and this one was a little bit more predictable, and these races are more predictable. The 800, there's just not as much going on in a 5K, and you know how the major protagonists are going to run. I thought that maybe Keely and Audrey were going to get into a battle for the front of the race, which they kind of did, and I thought that would maybe take a little bit out of Keely, who hasn't been in the best form, and certainly, I mean, that's no surprise, since the month of June, where she ran that PR 1:54.33. She looked very, very average at Prefontaine. She'd pulled out of that 400, the British champ. She didn't look great in that 800 in London. I thought that maybe Femke, who'd had an easy run, or would have an easy run in this one behind them, which she did, I thought Femke might go past her. And actually, that wasn't a bad prediction, because Femke ran incredibly well to run 1:55.5, which is certainly one of the fastest times in a women's final that we've ever seen in history. I didn't have enough time to find out what it is, but I would guess that's a top 15, maybe even a top 10 time that's ever been run in a women's final by Femke. And if Keely hadn't been on her game, Femke would have gone past her, but Keely was, and she visibly gritted her teeth with about 80 to go, and get this, she actually ran a slightly faster final 100 meters than Audrey Vero did. It wasn't incredibly fast. I think it was like 14.8 to 14.9 or something like that, but she still finished really well. But Audrey Vero, you're right, is just at a different level, even though, I don't know what your take is on this, but I don't believe she's quite at the same level as she was in June. And I think that's for a number of reasons. You've actually pointed this out on the pod before, and I think it's been a great call. You don't often come up with technical nuggets unless you've got really good ones. And this was a good one, that in the women's 800 meters, because the women are more reliant on their aerobic fitness, and we know this because they don't have the same amount of anaerobic power and anaerobic capacity as the men, they're more reliant on their aerobic fitness. You're more likely to see better performances from the women over the 800 meters early in the season, when they're coming off a lot of aerobic work. They haven't done a lot of anaerobic work, which has detracted from that.
Yes.
And I think that's what we're seeing with Audrey Vero now, because I know she fell in the semi-final, and so some people could say, hey, that's a good reason that impacted her in the final. She wasn't at her best, and I understand that, but I don't think she looked quite as sharp and as, I guess you say, like, just trying to think of an adjective here. She didn't quite look as like hot in the heats or the semi-finals as she had done earlier in the season. And so I think that we've also seen this from Keely before. When Keely's come off winter training, or in her first 800s of blocks, we saw this a couple of years ago in Silesia. She had a really good 800. She ran a PB there, and then they tend to tail off a little bit. So I don't think that Audrey was quite at her best in this championships. And I think that's what closed the gap. But Shano,
I don't entirely agree. I sort of agree. I think... I agree. I agree to the extent that I don't think she's in 1:53.80 shape anymore. But the reason I disagree a little bit, disagree is the wrong word. I've got a slightly different take. When Keely was running 1:55 mid or lowish in terms of Diamond League, she won the Olympics sort of like a 1:56x. It happens in the men's too sometimes, absent of, with the exception of a couple of crazy Olympic finals. Generally, they're about 0.75 to second slower. To actually add that velocity is even more off than the women's, obviously running at a slower pace. So I think to run 1:54.8 without a pacer, having to think about having had heat semis and falling, and having to think about where she puts her body. In fact, she's got that long speed, so she's not really able to think she's got that nuclear weapon up her sleeve in the last 80 or 100. I think Keely has probably got a better last 100, arguably, than, or at least not worse than, and coming off that shoulder, there's that brief moment I thought, could she slingshot past? Because Vero can be a little bit weak that last sort of 50, 80 meters. So I think to get it done, a la Keely getting it done in the Olympics as the one with the target on their back to run 154.8 and win your first, I say major, but well, it is a big championship. I think she's probably closer, but oh well.
Well, Shade, I know we didn't do an athlete's court last week, and we won't do an official one here. But you and I, in doing some analysis of this race, I know that I came up with a relatively hot take of my own here. And I know that you vehemently disagreed with it. So maybe we could do an athlete's court, an abbreviated one. Cue the segment. And it was that I noticed in the first 200 meters of this race that Audrey Vero and Keely Hodgkinson hit the 200 at exactly the same time, 27.4. But Keely Hodgkinson, again, has this habit of just getting out so much harder in the first 100 meters. And this was noted on the commentary by Tim Hutchings. He made a comment that Keely just can't help herself from running fast in the opening 100 meters. Hannah English, actually in the post-race sort of breakdown over the highlights, made the same comment that Vero actually, she was impressed with Vero for not getting out too hard in that opening 200 because it saved energy for her late in the race. My hot take though, Shane, is that in looking at the way these ladies ran this race, and they were very, very close throughout, there was never more than a couple of tenths separating them the whole way. Shane, I actually have this feeling in my gut that if Keely Hodgkinson had been able to be a little bit more conservative in that opening 200 meters, Shano, I think she may have been able to beat Audrey Vero yesterday. And I wonder if she left a title defense on the table. Now, I guess that's my, again, if I was going to make my case, and I'll let you rebut in this abbreviated athlete's court, the opening 100 meter splits, Keely Hodgkinson, 13.5 for the opening 100. And Shano, the energy cost of getting off the line that quick from 0 to run a 13.5 and this is very nerdy and technical, but I know we're a nerdy and technical podcast. We're very niche. So 13.5 for the opening 100, then a 13.9 to get to 27.4. Audrey Vero goes 13.8, 13.6. So she doesn't even run a 100 meter split as quick as Keely does, and her faster split, the 13.6, was down the back straight, so it was flying. I just feel like that energy cost, when you are running at this level where the margins are so fine, the athletes are so good, I just wonder if that energy cost just keeps killing Keely's ability to finish. We know she doesn't have an amazing anaerobic capacity or power. We know that, when she gets into that anaerobic threshold zone early, it's not good for her. And I just wonder, Shano, I'm going to make the comment, I think she could have won that race yesterday with slightly better execution in the opening 200 meters. And I feel that potentially if you flip them around and Audrey Vero had run the 13.5 opening 100, then a 13.9, I think the result would have been different.
I don't. I think that...
Otherwise, athletes' court wouldn't have worked.
I've got some stats for you here. So
I love it.
I've got Lausanne 2025, Leven indoor wood record 2026. I've got Stockholm 26 and Tokyo Worlds 25. Okay. Times ranging from 154.33 right up to 155.69. In all four of these races, her second lap was between 58.34 and 58.87. So statistically, no matter how fast she runs her first lap, her second lap is never better than about 58.5 to 58 high. I accept you can't argue with your comments about energy distribution in terms of that first 100. And I absolutely agree that she, in an ideal world, she could do it better. But where I differ is that the 800 meters, particularly the championship or just athletics or life in general, is not a perfect world. And they're all dealing with the same like adrenaline and urge and people around them and fighting for position. And they're all trying to get to a spot. And perhaps she's got some of that legacy thinking like we had when we were kids about that first 100, then settle in. So I get that. But I think, unless, and I don't mean this in a nasty way, but unless Jenny Meadows and Trevor Painter and Keely herself are idiots, I just don't think that they haven't thought about that and tried to adjust that first 100. I was looking for some evidence as well of examples of races where she has been considerably slower. Unfortunately, for the sake of my argument, there are none because she's always done it. So that lends further credibility to what you're saying. The other thing too is that I think even if you are right, which I agree with you in terms of it would be better, but I just don't know whether her failing in that regard is a execution failing, or whether it's just a physiological makeup of women in the 800, and they're all quite similar across the board in terms of they can't hold their pace for the last 600 as a percentage of what they start at. And even if they come off the pace, because I feel like I've watched, and I haven't looked into this at depth, but I feel like all the championship and Diamond League Women's 800 races I've seen, I feel like there's very few, if any, instances where the field, and if there are, tell me, I'm happy to be corrected, where the field is considerably slower and then runs a very strong negative split. Well, you do see it sometimes on the men's side. I just can't think of races that are like 57-0 and they come home in 57-5.
Shane, you want to know the only one that I can think of, and I agree with you.
Dragon Juice from the 1980s. Yeah.
It was the world record. The world record. Jarmila Kratovic went out in 50. Now, and I've always thought this too, though. Despite that, and I'm sorry to cut you off, but this is just such a great discussion point, because Kratovic 56.8 through the opening 400 in that one, and so she closed in 56.5. And the reason why maybe that gives an insight, I've always thought this, or at least I've begun to think this, is like Kratovic was a sub 48 second 400 meter runner. So really her advantage in the 800 should have lied in being able to run a faster opening 400 meters, right? If you were going to say like, hey, who's going to negative split an 800 world record? You would think it was more a 1500 meter based strength athlete, wouldn't you? Right. Yes. Like just as a general rule of thumb, right? And yet the way that Kratovic broke that world record was actually by going out and negative splitting the race and being a lot more conservative in the opening 400 or 500 meters of the race. And I've always wondered if that has provided an insight into this chase for the women's world record, or even just women's 800 meter running in general, because Kratovic, despite what she was doing, right, ran more of that race in an aerobic energy system without going past her threshold early, and then she was able to use that drug-induced anaerobic power, and that's really what the testosterone and all those synthetic hormones and steroids were providing, right? They don't really provide aerobic stimulus. They weren't using EPO back in the 80s. They were using bodybuilding drugs, anabolic stuff to create muscle, and yet the way she ran that world record points more to this aerobic. But to your point, Shano, I agree, because this is one of the only races that we've ever seen kind of negative split on the women's side. And I think they're eventually going to get there, because just remember, the men never used to do this either. You can go back to 1997, Wilson Kipketer ran 22.8 or 22.9 for the opening 200 of that crazy world record in Zurich, the 141.24. But yeah, so sorry to cut you off.
No, it's all good.
I think there's only one case.
I don't think they're going to get there, and the reason is factually for all the reasons you just explained. So the only one who's actually been able to do it is someone who we know took drugs, and she had the one thing that all these other women don't have is that strength.
Yeah, sub 48.
Going a little bit all over the place with this, but I think I love this topic. So, who's the guy? Edwin Moses. Edwin Moses apparently could do a whole lap of high knees at the track. Right,
yeah,
whole lap of high knee. Remember trying to do high knees for like 50 meters? So I see sprinters doing it like 20 meters and just have a heart attack. So that's how strong he was. David Martin, in that excellent book with Peter Coe, they talked about how the 800 was totally unique physiologically, because you have to be at about the average 4.8 conversion. You have to be about like 88 or 90% of your top speed for a lap, and then you have to run the whole last lap effectively at a huge deficit. So strength is an enormous thing.
Yeah.
So unless these women like Keely and that start taking drugs, or the next generation start taking drugs, I can't see how I'll try and be concise. I don't think the woman, it's just as simple as them deciding to run it a different way. I think the reason Kratok-Velova could do that was because she was using a metabolic agent which gave her the strength more customarily associated with men, with testosterone, and being strong enough to carry them. I think that's what's sort of going on with Keely, like the 27. You're telling me that Jenny Meadows, who is a great runner herself, Trevor Painter, that's their whole shtick. They're in that. You can't tell me that they haven't looked at it and gone, okay, if we just tinkered this, I'd struggle to believe, maybe, but I'd struggle to believe that they go, that's her, their whole shtick is they paid a lot of money, and, she's the Olympic champion. It's a big thing. That's their work. They haven't gone, actually, I don't know.
I think maybe the only reason against that, Shane, is just that it is getting super into the weeds. And if you'd asked me when I was an athlete 20 years ago, that's such a long time ago, 20 plus years ago, if half a second of speed in the opening 100 meters made a difference towards the end of the race, I probably would have scoffed and said, no, it doesn't. I don't feel any different. There's no difference for me whether I get out in 12.5 or 12 flat, right? And yet now when I look back with the benefit of hindsight and understanding the fine lines of physiology when you're really trying to get the most out of you, I guess I just have changed a little bit, and I do believe that these margins are just this tight, and that you can really, and I think probably the reason why I'm thinking this as well is, like, I look at what's happened at all these other events around the globe. Like, we just saw Josh Kerr run a 3:42 mile where his heart rate was so incredibly even and precise the entire way around there, basically for 1,300, 1,400 meters of this mile race and that enabled him to do the things that he was able to do through wave light. And I just think that all these performance gains that we're seeing in the sport, maybe not so much at the absolute top level, but certainly in the peloton, catching back up to everybody, I think coming through these minutiae and these minute details. And I just wonder if that's an opportunity. And I think the pattern is, and by the way, where'd you get those stats from Keely Hodgkinson there? Where did you get those ones? Because that seems quite familiar, those numbers there. Did you research them? Did you? Oh, I feel like I've written a few. You try to claim an attribution. Well, I feel like I've done a few analysis of these races and pointing out those exact.
No, I'm a lazy mofo. So I was on the couch last night, and you were talking about doing a few sort of like a few preparations, and I thought, I can't go in there completely unarmed.
Oh, that's good.
I asked Claude, and then I cross-referenced with the actual races I could find on the net.
I do love those numbers, because I think I'm improving points with people over the course of the last 12 months, or attempting to. I think I've seen the same numbers, so I knew exactly what you're talking about. She just, in all these styles of races, has been unable to really run under 58 seconds for that second lap. I'm still just trying to think about why, because Shayna was a 51 flat, 50, and let's say she, for all intents and purposes, has 50 flat 400 meter speed, like rolling without the start, right? She should be able to run faster, at least run a second 400 in under 58. And we've just never seen it in any form of race. But I think just in general, that's kind of was my point. And the only ace that I had up my sleeve on this one, and I know that I was trying to scare you, even though you're an unscarable man, is, I know that's not a word, was I reached out to Justin about it too, and I was like, hey, what did you think on this one? Yeah. And he was like, I agree. He was like, she gets out so hard, and he referenced the famous, who was it Johnny Gray or Cadivus Robinson? Do you remember that one from the Santa Monica Track Club back in the free energy in the first 100 meters? Remember that myth where it was like, you've got all this anaerobic store.
Yeah, so, up to 10 seconds.
Yeah, something like that. So it really allegedly makes no difference how fast you run the opening, 10 seconds of a race.
He's coaching guys, like Hoey and English is one championship, and using all that, the thinking of Justin. So you can't really, you'd be a fool to argue with it. So anyway. I just it's like I said, I never said I don't agree with you. I think there's just more goes on in these athletes. Is like we're treating it like an abstraction, like it's someone sitting in a like a golf type setting where no one else is involved, and you can just do it in an optimized almost way that like a computer would do it, and it just feels difficult. Like it feels like a lot gets in there at the
It's very much at the minutia, the ultra minutia level of this kind of running, but who knows? Yeah. Maybe we'll see. Shano, how are you doing for time? You got to get out of here?
I've got to go, mate.
Yeah. Okay. Let's get you out of here in general. Euros in general, solid meat. It just seems a little bit too long, doesn't it? Hey, one thing I noticed, I was like, man, what's going on Sunday? This is what you're getting on Sunday at the Euro show. Now, you're getting the 4x100 mixed, the men's 3,000 steeplechase, the women's 1,500, and the 4x4 relays. Just, I'm not sure if that is an incredibly compelling program that would make me want to.
It's like a cricket test match.
Yeah, it is. So I think in general, my buddy James Mackay, shout out to James, he's a fan and friend of the podcast. He said that the rumors are coming out of Birmingham that they're looking to maybe reduce dramatically the length of the European Championships in the future, maybe down to 3 or even 4 days. So yeah, but what would you give this Euros as a ranking?
It's
ABC, the school grade style.
I'm an unqualified arbiter of that because I haven't really, other than like a few key races. Normally, it's World Champs, Olympics. You have it on the whole time, and it's just like you just lean into the vibe of the whole thing. But it'd be unfair. I mean, the men's 5 that was cool because of Jakob. Women's 8 with those 3. So I really couldn't tell you. I thought it was pretty empty, etc. And we're nerds of the sport. We don't really care. Like I even enjoyed the Olympics with no one in the stands watching the top guys. But as an event, from what you're telling me, anecdotally, probably a little bit lukewarm. But
yeah, it's a C minus right now. Unfortunately, just wish it would present a little bit more or a little bit better on the telly. Ironically, I think the Com Games even presented just a little bit better on the telly, smaller stadium.
Just quickly on that, the way the world has gone, I was just in the States for 2 weeks, and it's not necessarily a good thing, but like cultural heritage ties is all being sort of destroyed by capitalism, and so people aren't going off to the comms or the Euros now in a out of a sense of like national pride or loyalty. Right. They're not going into these things and thinking this X medal and this means something in that way. It really is more about just the global level of competition. So it just people aren't treating them.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, yearning for the good old days when you'd see the European Championships, the German section in the crowd. You'd have the British section in the crowd. It seemed like it was definitely a lot more. Yeah, just innocent times in the world, Shano. Anyway,
we could have the what would that be? MTGA hats on. Make track great again.
Love that.
Yeah.
Let's do it.
Maybe we'll get some MTGA.
Yep. I can see it now. MTGA and then the little track stitch logo there on the side. Corduroy hats. Viral.
I reckon all 15 of our fans would wear one of those.
Guys, if you would like to see us create these hats,
make track great again.
Like and subscribe. Is that what they say on the YouTube these days?
Follow us for the chance to win a meat pack.
Well, maybe if you follow us or get some new people along to the track stitch, you will win one of these hats that haven't been created yet. But Shana, we'll get onto that. You never know what's going to come up. You might get something in the mail.
I think the stitch to survive with the cost of the subscription you told me about eye-watering cost. I think we might need to make us into a slightly
expensive, isn't it?
It is. It's an expensive
bloody $450 or something for this. Just as well, we've got that big sponsorship deal.
I used to say to you when you were 12 and they bought you your favorite toy, maybe 12 is a bit old, when you were 5 and bought you your favorite Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtle toy, you don't know how lucky you are, young man. All you fans out there, you think it's comes easy and there's no cost for us. We're doing that. We're doing God's work.
Just as well, we've got that big sponsorship deal with Super Cheap Auto Parts. Nearly signed, Shano. Okay, Shano, we'll get you out of here. Don't want you to get in trouble with Binny. Enjoy the golf lessons with Cash Marvin. And I'm not sure about next week because I'm off to UTMB, the big trail race in Switzerland. No, not Switzerland. Wash my mouth out. In France, sorry. I'm off to that, so we'll see what we do. Maybe we can do an improvised pod of some description, depending on what's going on in the world track. But Shano, this was fun. Good energy in the pod today. I think we got through a lot of stuff, and we'll see you in a see ya.
Right,
Right, mate. Have a good one. Peace.